Good afternoon, everyone. This is the 10th meeting of the Civic Works Committee. The City of London is committed to making every effort to provide alternate formats and communication supports for council, standing or advisory committee meetings, and information upon request. To make a request for any city service, please contact accessibility@london.ca or 519-661-2489, extension 2425. To make a request specific to this meeting, please contact cwc@london.ca. For everyone's information, I have Councillor Fife Millar in chambers with me today. Councillor Helmer is not here yet, and we do have, perfect. So Councillor Helmer's here, so we have full committee and definitely quorum then. Is there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, on our consent item, we have 2.1 through to 2.11. I'll make everyone aware that there were some added communication in regards to 2.1. And another addition under items for direction. So dealing with our consent, items 2.1 through to 2.11, is there anything anyone would like pulled separate? Councillor Van Holst? Councillor Van Holst, your video is frozen and you're a little bit choppy.
2.5.
Okay, sorry, could you repeat that?
Five, if you would.
2.5? Okay, so at the moment I have 2.5 to be pulled. Mayor Holder, do you have something you wanted pulled separate?
No, but when people have done that, I'm happy to move the balance of the consent agenda, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Seeing, as long as Councillor Van Holst, your audio was choppy, so I had 2.5 being pulled separate. If there's anything else, please let me know. Otherwise, I have a mover for items 2.1 through to 2.4 and 2.6 to 2.11, moved by Mayor Holder, seconded by Councillor Fife Millar. Okay, looking for questions and comments from item 2.1, well, everything except 2.5, that's easier. Okay, I will start my speakers list with Councillor Van Holst.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I hope that you're able to hear me all right.
Yes, you're coming through clearly. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay. So I guess I had some questions about a number of items. Maybe I'll start with 2.4. So I think this is great. The fact that we can get 50 plus years more life out of a sewer pipe by lining it is wonderful. I noticed that a number of the proponents weren't able to bid, or their bids weren't accepted because they failed in the technical aspects. And what I wanted to ask is, where exactly did that failure happen? How is it that they failed to meet those technical requirements?
Okay, thank you. Ms. Ramalou?
Thank you. Thank you, through the chair. So although we don't publicly discuss the specific details of these proposals that are submitted, it generally falls into the range of project understanding, their approach and the feasibility of it, if it meets city standards or safety standards, that sort of thing. Should be noted also that we do offer a follow-up conversation with the bidders to go over their proposals in detail in that confidential nature as well.
Councillor Van Holst?
Okay, thank you. That's fine. For 2.8, I do want to say that I was at first raising a little eyebrows because of the contract price increases, but I appreciate that the report described pretty well in each instance why that was the case. So I'm happy to support that. I did have a question about 2.9, but I got an answer for that offline, Madam Chair. Perhaps back to 2.3, we talk about automated turning movement studies. Now, I know this, we do a number of kinds of traffic studies. I don't know that I've seen this phrase before. Could, through you, perhaps staff would describe exactly what's happening there. It seems like a very limited version of a traffic study. And what do we expect to get from this one?
Okay, thank you for the question. Mr. McCray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate the interest. This is essentially counting activity at intersections. It's a process that uses some technology. So the intersection is videoed, and then computer technology is used to process and count vehicles, pedestrians, cyclists over a day-long period. And the information is used to respond to public concerns, future planning of the network, and also day-to-day management of our traffic signal system. Councillor
Van Holst.
Great, thank you. I'm satisfied with that, Madam Chair.
Okay.
I think that's fine for my questions.
Okay, so looking to other committee members or visiting councillors, if there's any questions they have in regards to item 2.1 through to 2.4, 2.6 through to 2.11. Okay, I'm just going to ask Mr. Stanford briefly just to comment on 2.11, as this is a change to a bylaw change to the waste recovery of toilets at curbside collection. We've tried a few different things, and this one's to help keep workers safe due to biohazards. Just for the public knowledge, hopefully the media will message something out to help us with our messaging, as this is a change to how we're doing some collections. Mr. Stafford?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The recommendation before you is one where when it comes to toilets, for the most part, a toilet placed at the curb is intact. And we ask the homeowner to take it or to break it down into two parts, the tank and the bowl part. Unfortunately, from time to time, a toilet will come to the curb that is cracked or broken, and sometimes the cracks are not visible to the worker. And when they're picked up, the toilet actually falls apart, and the tank has unfortunately cut some workers in the past. So what we're proposing now is a broken tank is best handled by the homeowner and can be dropped off at the Enviro depots. So that will be the minor change. On average, we're handling about 40 to 50 toilets per day. Most are in good shape and do not pose any restrictions. And in fact, to help householders out, if it is in good shape, we're going to eliminate the need to box it. So that will actually be helpful for most homeowners. And of course, the last thing is that last year when we put in place a change, we also encouraged people to bring items to the Enviro depot. And that has proven reasonably successful. And over a period of time, the number of toilets that have been dropped off has increased. And in a future report, we will be bringing forward some ideas on how perhaps we no longer collect any toilet at the curb because the material becomes a desirable item, but that would be part of a future report, Madam Chair. For now, what we have before you is just an adjustment to a safety feature for both our city workers and our contractor as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stanford, for that update, and look forward to eliminating all this waste in a future report at curbside collection. Looking for any other questions or comments by committee or visiting councillors prior to calling the vote on everything with the exception of 2.5. Okay, seeing none, calling the question.
Sorry, Councillor Ploza.
Sorry, Councillor Lewis, go ahead.
Whereas I'm getting all the way to the meeting here. And apologies for the last minute getting my audio turned on. Through you to our staff, I just wanted to quickly touch on the 2.8, the contract price increase on the 21 infrastructure renewal contracts. One of those projects, of course, is in my ward. the Wavell bike lane. And I wanted to first share frustration. Here we are in July of 2022, and a project that should have been done last year is still under construction. I want to, however, particularly take the opportunity to thank Jeff Jongsma, who's been our project lead from the city on this. He has been absolutely fantastic in terms of his communication with residents and with myself, going door to door when necessary. But this project, if I was to go back in time and have a chance to vote on it again, knowing what I know today, I frankly wouldn't support it. From a design and implementation perspective, it's been one problem after another. And I realized that we didn't have the contingency built into the initial tender, and this is why it's on the list today to have a contingency provided, because we are right at our budget limits. But I understand that this is also, one of the reasons that this was advanced in the schedule was because of federal funding coming to help cover the cost of this. So when we have to add in a contingency, how does this impact our agreement through you to our staff in terms of our federal funding? And I'm just wondering if any staff can comment on moving forward, lessons that have been learned out of this, so that next time we don't encounter so many barriers to delivering a project like this, because it has been an absolute nightmare for residents on the street to deal with a project that's now closing in on about 9 months long when it was supposed to only be 3 or 4 months long.
Okay, thank you for those questions and comments. Ms. Scher or Ms. Dan?
Thank you, through the chair. And I appreciate the comments from Councillor Lewis. I know this has been a challenging project, and it was an interesting year in 2021 with all of our projects seeing a lot of new challenges across the industry with new regulations, market factors, pandemic related issues, but our teams have really been working to try to minimize those where we can. This project also did have some funding that was part of it. Originally, I think that the schedule for that, we needed to push this project through really quickly last year to get it started to meet that timeline. And then thankfully the construction window was extended, which allowed us to be able to go through and get the job done right and carry some of that work over into this year to finish it up. So we are moving forward. As far as the contingency and adding this in, this is something that would have been included in the original project. We just need to kind of make that correction and cover it off. The additional contract increase is within what would have been accounted for in the original contingency had that been properly included in the contract.
Councillor Lewis?
Thank you, and I'm glad, and I appreciate Ms. Dan clarifying that the construction window was extended, because I did have some worries that because of the length of time, we were going to run into not being able to deliver on the federal government's timelines for getting these projects completed. But I'm glad to hear that that opportunity was extended. And I know that we're talking about contingency funds right now, but I'm just wondering if the staff can comment at all on any lessons that maybe we have learned from this in terms of avoiding future delays. And I know that things like supply chains can't be predictable right now. I completely understand that. I know that one of the large problems we've had has been around the lack of ability to get police officers to manage intersection closures at signalized intersections. We've had to go to actually full closures to allow work to happen because officers weren't available. So are we going to be looking at, for future projects, potentially moving forward with just doing a full closure so that we can stay on schedule versus waiting and hoping that an officer will voluntarily sign up to do an intersection control? And are there other things that we've found through this process that will prevent these kind of delays in the future?
Ms. Dan?
Yes, through the chair, staff are continuing to always apply those lessons learned from our future projects. One of the things that we have been seeing across all of our projects is some sporadic attendance when it comes to being able to secure an officer to do the traffic controls. So we are looking at planning for a full closure option when we think that that might be a possibility. But we're also continuing to work with London Police Services and see if there's some different ways we can approach how we book those officers to be able to take that work. It is a requirement that if we are keeping the signals open under the Highway Traffic Act, we do need to have a police officer controlling traffic.
Councillor Lewis?
Okay, thank you for that. And I think that that's a discussion we need to continue to have with our provincial colleagues as well, in terms of whether or not that's the best use of a police officer's time. Even though I know it's voluntary duty for them, they can sign up for it. But knowing the workload they have, maybe that's a discussion that we need to have with our provincial colleagues in terms of how those rules are applied in the future. I just want to say again, I cannot say it enough how much I appreciate in particular the outreach that Mr. Jongsma has done with the residents. He's been spectacular. And I know that, and I see Ms. Dan nodding her head, and I can't say enough how much I appreciate the extra work he has put into things. It has made a difference. This has been a very frustrating project, but it is going to connect 2 elementary schools, Kiwanis Park, the new East Lyons Community Center. There is a community benefit to this at the end of the tunnel, and I think we see the light at the end of the tunnel finally. So hopefully this contingency puts us in a position to get this job done right away and get that bike lane finally open so people can start using it.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. Looking for any further questions or comments on every item on consent with the exception of 2.5. Calling the question.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 6-0.
Okay. 5, appointment of consulting engineer and drainage superintendent by law update under the Drainage Act. Councillor Van Holst, you had this one pulled?
I did, Madam Chair.
Okay,
And
would you like
my
to speak your
concern
concern? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And my concern about this one is the obviously demand for someone who can be our drainage superintendent. And I know that we're training someone while we contract a consultant, but my concern is that person might in the near future be acquired by some other municipality. So I wonder if staff might comment on the possibility of training more than one person during this process, so that we can be assured that we'll have somebody to fill that position in the long term.
Okay, thank you for that question. Ms. Rimelu, can you talk about retention and poaching?
Sure. Thank you through the chair. We have now identified the internal candidate who will be trained in this. We have not identified more than one person at this point with the memorandum of understanding with the union that would have to be accounted for as well. It is, of course, always a potential that our staff can be poached, but we hope through training and other, staff management and good relationships that doesn't happen. I believe the individual that we have identified is very committed to the city, and I'm very comfortable moving forwards with that person.
Thank you, Councillor Van Holst.
Okay, well, thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, looking for a mover and a seconder for item 2.5.
I can move that.
Okay, moved by Councillor Van Holst, seconded by Councillor Van Berbergen. Looking for any further questions or comments for item 2.5. Seeing none, calling the question.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. Scheduled items, there are none. Items for direction, we have one being 4.1, and I will draw your attention that there is an added communication from Councillor Van Holst within the package today. Councillor Van Holst, would you like to start off with telling us about item 4.1?
Yes, of course, Madam Chair. Thank you very much. You know, there's days where I think London is definitely leading in public service, and then other days when I think not so much. And those days are often when I travel to River Road. So there's a number of challenges that happen here, and I hope to describe those to the committee and then see what we can do to move forward with those. The condition and the configuration of River Road is a challenge. Maybe the first thing I would point out is in my added communication. It just shows you one of the corners where trucks need to make turns, and they're often turning, making a hairpin turn at River Road. That it's maybe 120 turn, and off they're cutting over top of the curb. You can see a photo there with the damage. The drivers there complain that it's a bit dangerous because in order to navigate that, they've got to move into the oncoming lane on River Road and then turn into the oncoming lane on Gore Road before they can start moving correctly again. Now, there is the possibility of reconfiguring that corner, but there's also another solution, and this is what I'm getting to here. In our London plan and in the past, we have planned to connect the two ends of Scanlon Street. And on my second communication, you can see how that shows up in the maps of our London plan. And that basically skirts the River Road section where there's residences in there. And we also hope to see a better quality road that's a little more befitting for trucks. Another challenge with River Road, it's quite narrow. The water pools on it. The asphalt deteriorates because we don't have a stormwater drain in there. And so there's many potholes. It's a bit dangerous to drive on. There's some other challenges. I'll get to those. But my hope then is that we will in fact make this connection of these two streets. I see some construction going on, and I see that Scanlon is being extended, but I'm not sure if that connection is going to be made, and so that was one of my concerns. And so maybe at this point, I can just ask through you to staff, what are our plans for this area and that Scanlon Street connection?
Thank you. Ms. Chair?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the Scanlon Street connection is conceptually shown in the London plan as connecting those two disparate segments, as the councillor has referenced. In order for that to proceed, however, a full environmental assessment is required, and that assessment is not currently scheduled. The intent would be to make that connection when future upgrades occur to Veterans Memorial Parkway, which would see the removal of the at-grade intersection at River Road and would require that this become a more significant route. So it is not currently scheduled in our budget, and nor is the environmental assessment scheduled or financed.
Okay. Thank you. Just for clarification, you say not currently scheduled. Does that mean it's like at least 5 years out, 10 years out, more than a decade out?
It is not in the 10-year capital plan, nor is it currently identified in the development charges study. Those works are, of course, being upgraded through our next multi-year budget and the development charges work that is currently underway, but that work is not financed nor staff resources available to start it at this point.
Thank you. Councillor Van Holst.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. This is something that I may want to move ahead because there's quite a need in the area. And I think it's going to be necessary for us to provide some good solution in this place. The connecting things, and I guess I want to ask about that in environmental study. We have a situation where there's an unevaluated vegetation patch there. I walked through that. It's essentially it's a field. It's surrounded by a railway, 3 industrial properties, and an old landfill. And I think that seems to be holding things up as well. The neighbors are looking for a stormwater solution in this, and that Scanlon Street connection, because it has stormwater on the east, could be the solution. I think there's a number of possible solutions for this area, and that's one. And so I'm interested in seeing that possibility looked at, or if not, we need another solution, definitely. So some of the problems that are arising because of stormwater, there's one business that's we hope to have involved in recycling, is having trouble starting because there's no stormwater solution for them. Across the street is another almost silly situation, and certainly something that I might even move forward because of climate change. But the rainwater that hits River Road has no place to go, so it either pools up or it ends up in the properties that are adjacent to the road. In one case, it gets onto the parking lot, which is drained into a pool that's supposed to collect the water from a recycling place, and that water has to be tested and treated. So what ends up happening?
Sorry, Counselor, I'm just going to interject. You're at your 5 minutes for introducing this item. I just want to draw everyone's attention to page 71, that you had a motion that you were going to table today of A, B, and C of what you would like staff directed to do. And before we go further, I'm assuming Councillor Van Holst, you would like to move your motion?
Well, Madam Chair, this is a pretty complicated situation. I will move that the part that talks about a stormwater solution, because then as I was about to get to the situation that place that the businesses are struggling with, I think we need at the very least that, and I can come back with the others and a plan for the others. But part C is saying staff be directed to provide at least a verbal report to the CWC by September 13th with the description of how the stormwater servicing decision will be made, which options will not be considered, and when a connection could likely be expected. But perhaps that's the motion I would like to see. I think the neighbors are the neighboring property owners there are very interested in this, and there's a big need for it. So I guess if you're demanding and prefer me not to describe it a little further, I can put that on the floor, or perhaps I can simply ask through you to our staff if they can provide that verbal report now.
Absolutely. Let's try for immediate feedback and knowledge from staff. Ms. Scher, in regards to part C of how or when stormwater servicing could be implemented in this area, what are some general overviews of timelines, the process, and if you have any ballpark of what it would cost? As I don't believe, as you've already mentioned, this isn't in DCs or the budget yet, of just what would be involved financially in trying to do this?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So unfortunately, the infrastructure in this area came into the city through annexation many, many years ago, and it is not what we would provide if we were developing a new industrial subdivision. Equally, unfortunately, there really are very few short-term solutions related to stormwater management in the area that would not trigger at the least an environmental impact study, but more than likely an environmental assessment. Any changes, particularly to the parcel that the councillor referred to as the unvegetated patch, would also impact some obligations the city took when we received that land a few years back that require us to restore that land to a forested wetland. So realistically, in order to advance any city-led infrastructure projects to manage stormwater differently in this area, we are looking at an environmental assessment. That process is approximately 2 years. It is a complicated area environmentally, as well as in terms of the types of land use and alterations that have occurred out there over many decades. We are seeing some improvements associated with the development that is currently under construction in this area. There will be some channel improvements associated with that work that we do believe will provide some relief for the overall flows. But if the committee wishes to proceed with this, my best advice would be that we would look to the multi-year budget amendment process and decide which projects we would postpone or cancel in order to create the financial capacity and staff capacity to start this work in 2023, with an expectation we probably would be done late 24, and at that point we'd be able to provide a financial update. Right now, we don't have even an order of magnitude cost for holistic drainage solutions in the area.
Thank you for that update and insight. Councillor Van Holst.
Thank you. So in response to that, I would say I can come forward with something like that. I think it's important. And now I'll describe one of the situations that we have is rainwater draining into a property where water in a pool needs to be treated. So what ends up happening is that the business owner has to truck the water to as far as Sarnia for treatment. And this is rainwater that we're trucking to an hour away to another city. And you can see how almost ludicrous that is certainly in terms of our climate plan. It's extremely wasteful. It's and it's expensive. So we need to really be providing something for this area. I'll point out that they, for decades, have been paying taxes and ironically have been paying for us to service new industrial areas, while this one is left in the situation it is. And we did annex it, but that does mean that we're responsible. And if we don't make this kind of change by providing that solution, the road's going to continue to deteriorate. I know that we made some temporary repairs. Even those are seeing some problems. So we need a solution for this street. And maybe I can ask, what about the street itself? So the condition of the road, what does staff, and I know they were planning work, had said they would look into that. Perhaps through you, Madam Chair, they can describe what they have come up with so far, if they've gotten that far. What will happen to the condition of that road? How will it be improved?
Thank you. And Councillor, just for clarity, are you talking about Scanlon Road or River Road or both?
I'm talking about River Road at this time,
Okay.
Madam Chair.
And that pertains to like the pavement quality index and safety concerns?
Yes.
Okay, to staff?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll start and then I'll turn it over to Mr. McCray to finish. Sorry, I think I froze there for a second. Any massive changes to the alignment of the area would require an environmental assessment. However, we do plan to do some intensive maintenance and reconstruction of the existing alignment. We have fairly serious property restrictions. It's a bit of a tricky project, but we are able to work within the existing alignment without triggering an environmental assessment that would require more time and investment. So I can flip it over to Mr. McCray, and I think he's got a bit of information around the timing of when we intend to do that preservation work.
Thank you. Yes, from a transportation perspective, River Road is the arterial road and the direct connection through the area. It's continued to be maintained with routine maintenance that was identified, and we are in the process of scoping out a more substantial pavement rehabilitation project. All the right-of-ways in the area are particularly narrow, so it limits the ability to provide improvements and setback infrastructure as much as we'd like. So we're in the process of beginning the scoping of that project, and once we're into the, I've identified the scope reasonably well, it'll be programmed into the multi-year capital program.
Thank you. Councillor Van Holst, looking for direction of if you have a motion to bring or you would like to work through this with the multi-year budget process.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One more question, if I may. Now, if we refer to the added communication I have, we can see that the Scanlon Street River Road intersection, where that tight turn needs to be made, the point has been taken off. There's a lot of paving there, and that's a turn that can be navigated well by trucks. So my question then, outside of the River Road quality, its pavement quality itself, if staff could comment on the possibility of reconfiguring the River Road Gore Road turn to be something similar, so that that corner is a little safer to navigate. What's the possibility of getting that done in a more near future?
Thank you. And just the councilor's referring to the photo on page 73 for his added communication. Mr. McCray?
Yeah, reviewing the geometrics of that intersection will form part of the project that is currently being scoped out. That location is one example of property lines that limit our ability to make geometric improvements. So some analysis needs to be carried out to see how we can improve that situation.
Okay, thank you. Councillor?
Okay, thank you. And I think the owner of that property may have made some allowance or has considered the possibility of that being sold. So that may help as well. There's certainly a lot of interest by the property owners in having a solution here, and I'm sure they'll be more than happy to cooperate in a solution. So at this point, Madam Chair, I think I'll thank you and our staff for the answer to the question, and I'll look forward to see that the plan that's coming forward, and also look to the multi-year budget for a solution to the stormwater situation, which I do hope our staff would spend a little time on trying to come up with a short-term answer. I don't know if that's possible, but I'd also like to look a little further into the constraints that have been placed on that piece of property that we acquired, and how we could make use of that in some other way, and in a way that benefits the local area a little bit. They certainly need some benefits. Thank you.
Thank you for advocating for your constituents as the ward councillor, and we look forward to Mr. McCray and his team's report as this comes forward, as they're working through solutions for this area. That concludes our items for direction. Councillor Helmer?
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure I understand the River Road aspects of what Councillor Van Holst has has raised and where it might come forward in future capital budget. So for River Road, there's the existing condition of the pavement, which I would anticipate would be a life cycle capital project of some kind. The addition of storm sewers, this would be a service improvement project, would be my expectation. And then any future construction of the Scanlon Street connection would be a growth capital project and will be funded through the growth capital sources of financing. I just want to make sure I understand what these various projects are, because I see them as sort of three distinct things with different kinds of potential sources of financing for them. Maybe through the chair, I can just check with city staff that would be sort of how each of those aspects would be handled.
Yep, to staff. To Ms. Chair or other budget-wise people who would like to talk about what pot this comes out of. Sorry, it was your wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
I got stuck not on camera and maybe on sound, but I think we're good to go now. Sorry, Councillor, in the technical challenge there, could you repeat your question?
I just wanted to make sure that I understand what kind of projects these potential future projects would be. So my expectation is that the River Road pavement issues would be a life cycle capital project of some kind, that adding storm sewers along River Road would be some kind of service improvement capital project, and that connecting Scanlon Street would be a growth project, and that they would have the sort of normal kinds of financing available to them for those different kinds of projects. Is that right?
Thank you, Councillor. That is absolutely correct. The potential stormwater improvements could potentially be somewhat DC funded as well in the future, but not having those designed or planned, it's hard to know what would be benefiting area versus growth in the long-term plans for the area. Right now, I think the best way for us to assess these, barring an amendment made as part of the 2023 update, would be to let the mobility master plan, which would address the Scanlon Street question, pavement piece aside, the development charges work that's underway in the next capital multi-year budget would be a really good mechanism to decide how to move these forward. That said, of course, if Councillor Van Holst wishes to make an amendment motion as part of the choose process for 2023, staff would be happy to be prepared to have that conversation as well.
Councillor?
Thank you. And just one last thing I just want to clarify. I appreciate the councillor bringing it up. Just ballpark, and maybe I'll just, if it's a question for Mr. McCray or Ms. Chair, I'm not sure, but it looks like it's maybe 800 meters or something, the Scanlon Street connection. So are we talking about like a $4 million project? Like roads are not cheap, so just connecting that road, I think that's probably a ballpark, but I want to just check so people can have some kind of understanding of what we're talking about in terms of building a new road.
Yeah. To Ms. Chair, realizing that you've already mentioned an EA in this, the councillor mentioned some other concerns in this area of prior uses prior to annexation. A ballpark?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Certainly it is about that sort of length. We would need to do the environmental assessment to see what sorts of remediation, other infrastructure and reinstatement is required in the area, as well as any improvements to the intersections at either end. I suspect you're fairly close in terms of the number, but my crystal ball on project estimating has not been as good as it used to be, given some price escalations. We would certainly endeavor to get that information as part of the EA. That would be a requirement.
Councillor Helmer?
Just to say, I think pursuing the growth-related project through development charges, where it can be evaluated along with all the other growth-related needs, is the right course of action. And certainly, when I saw the letter, frankly, I was kind of alarmed by the idea that we just, well, we walked through this field, and now it's time to build a road, which is going to cost $4 million. So, I think this is the right way of handling it: is get it on the radar for the longer-term capital planning. And all these things come with their own pros and cons, all the various projects we got to work on. And I think getting it on the agenda is the first step. I've approved many budgets at the City of London in the time I've been on council, and none of these projects are in any of them. So I think adding them into the capital budget is the first step for the growth related project. It needs to be pursued through the DC bylaw and the update to that.
Okay. Also going to be looking to committee to see if there's going to be a motion to receive the communications from Councillor Van Holst. Counselor Van Holst, is your hand raised to move acceptance of your correspondence?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Although I'm happy to move that, I did have another question through you to staff, and thanks to for Councillor Helmer for his questions as well. So presently, there's some construction happening right now, and that Scanlon Street is being extended, and I wonder how, if staff could describe what that's looking like now, what that's going to look like, and how much closer we're getting, that will get us to that connection, because it seems like it may be different now, or we might have another opportunity because there's going to be that road extended already. It seems that's happening in the present
Okay, to staff.
construction.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe we have Mr. McRae and Mr. Barrett here. So between the two of them, I think they could speak to the extension associated with the development currently in progress.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. The Scanlon Street connection has several different sections and complexities to it, both with respect to property ownership and things like land use and zone environmental features. So a environmental assessment, as has been previously mentioned, would be required to define the alignment. And so that's really necessary to better fine tune the conceptual alignment that's shown in the official plan. There is an initial extension underway as part of an area development at, I believe it's 1950 Gore Road, I think, if I have the address correct. There's also a section of city parkland in the area. And then there's, so where the alignment goes exactly is really, and I guess this feeds into the question about the cost. It's really all a function of the environmental assessment and determining what alignment is most appropriate for this connection.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Van Holst, are you satisfied with that before I look for a seconder to receive your communication?
Thank you. So I'll guess, so there is some construction happening right now, Madam Chair, and I suppose there's going to be some site plan that we'll be able to see. Is there an estimate of when that will that be coming to council? Is that, so I guess that's my question. Will we be able to see soon what's going to happen on the property just to the, I guess, the northeast of our own?
Mr. Barrett?
Thank you, through Madam Chair. Currently, there's the property is undergoing a site plan review and approval. That's an administrative process. The lands are zoned for the use that's being considered on them now. So this won't be coming back for any further review or approval by municipal council.
Okay, thank you. Councillor, are you satisfied?
I'm satisfied for now, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you.
I can move that.
Okay, Councillor Van Holst has moved receipt of 4.1 and 4.1A. Councillor Helmer, is that a second? Okay, Councillor Helmer has seconded. Any other further questions, or, well, it's received. So I'm just going to call the question. Just for everyone's information, Mayor Holder had to cut out at 12:45 for another engagement.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Moving on to our matters list. Looking to see if there's any questions on it. If not, I will need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Fife Millar moves it. Councillor Van Holst, your hand is up. Are you seconding it?
Happy to second that,
Thank you.
Madam
Any
Chair.
questions? Seeing none, calling the question. Okay, just one moment, please. We're having a technical issue.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. I'm not aware of any additional business, so looking to committee if there is something I'm not made aware of. Seeing none, that takes us to the adjournment portion of our agenda. Looking for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Fife Millar, seconded by Councillor Van Merbergen. A hand vote is adequate. All those in favor, and Councillor Van Holst, if you want to do yours verbally, please do. Oh, he has a hand up. Perfect.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, everyone. That concludes our 10th meeting of the Civic Works Committee, and I wish you a wonderful day as I will be seeing you all tomorrow.